Good morning, Boker Tov, everyone. Today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address Congress and the United States of America. And what message will he be bringing to the world stage? We have just begun the 3 weeks yesterday, the 3 weeks of mourning for the destruction of our temple. And it begins on the 17th of Tammuz, which incidentally, the number 17 is Yud Zayin, which is Yud equals 10 and Zayin equals 7. And of course, 10-7 was the day of the tragic invasion of Hamas into Israel. Yesterday we mourned the breaching of the walls of our enemy. The Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem, which led to the destruction of the temple. We understand now what breaching of walls means. Back on 17th of Tammuz, when the Romans breached our walls, because we saw it in our own day and age when Hamas breached our walls on 10-7, on October 7th. But what message will be bringing to the world? So we find something interesting when it comes to the 3 weeks. You see, when we have mourning in Judaism, when God forbid someone loses a loved one, they begin with the 7 days of mourning, which are the most intense days. Then they go to the 30 days of mourning. And then they go to the 11 months of Kaddish, and then ultimately the full year of the Yartzeit. As time goes on, the mourning lessens and weakens and becomes less severe, because naturally with time, our mourning declines and decreases. However, when it comes to the 3 weeks of mourning, it takes an opposite trajectory. Yesterday was the fast day, which began the 3 weeks. The beginning of the 3 weeks, there are restrictions in Jewish law. We're not allowed to have music, concerts. We're not allowed to take haircuts. But then when we get to Rosh Chodesh Av, we begin the 9 days where the mourning intensifies even more. So we don't launder fresh clothing during the 9 days. But then we come to the week of Tisha B'Av, the actual week of Tisha B'Av, where we once again increase our level of mourning. And then the day of Tisha B'Av is the ultimate day of mourning, when we literally sit on the ground and fast for 24 hours. And the question is, why in personal mourning, God forbid, do we go from the most severe to the more lenient forms of mourning? When it comes to the 3 weeks, we go in the opposite direction. We begin with the lesser restrictions of mourning, and the mourning grows and becomes more intense as time goes on. And the answer is that when it comes to one's personal life, they feel the intensity of the loss most at the moment it occurs. And with time, it naturally declines. It becomes lessened. However, when we're talking about a tragedy that occurred 2,000 years ago, like the destruction of the temple, we don't naturally feel the loss. We have to educate ourselves. We have to learn about the tragedies. And the more we learn over the period of the 3 weeks of what we lost and the tragedies that befell the Jewish people as a result of the exiles and the destruction of the temples, the more we grow in our grieving and our mourning until it comes to a pinnacle on the actual day of Tisha B'Av. And here we have to understand the importance of education. Without education, without information, without knowledge, we don't know even what we lost. And therefore it takes a 3-week period to educate ourselves, to remind ourselves, to re-experience what occurred to our ancestors, not only in the destruction of the temple, but throughout all of Jewish history. On Monday it was announced by the IDF that 2 more hostages were discovered to be dead and killed by Hamas in Gaza. One of them was a 76-year-old man whose name was Alex Danzig. Alex Danzig was born in 1948 in Poland to parents who were Holocaust survivors, had just survived the Holocaust. And he was born in 1948 in Poland, and his parents came with him as a child. In 1957, when he was 9 years old, they immigrated to Israel. Alex grew up understanding the tragedy that befell his parents and his grandparents, where most of his family was killed by the Nazis. And he devoted his entire life to Holocaust education. He worked for Yad Vashem, in particular in educating Jewish Israeli students about the history of the Holocaust and taking them to Poland, his birth country, to learn firsthand about the atrocities that befell his family and 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust. And he would bring educators from Poland to Israel, to Yad Vashem, to teach them about Israel and about Jewish life and about Judaism, and to educate them to try to stomp out hatred and evil from the world. And he hosted educational programs in Poland, educating teachers and clergy members and putting school programs into place to educate Polish children about the atrocities of the Holocaust. And his one message was that good and evil is a free choice that each and every one of us has. We can choose our path to be good or evil. So much so that one of the hostages that was released in November, Nili Margalit, who was a nurse, said that in captivity, she was with him and he was giving lectures on Jewish history in Gaza. That's what he did in his last weeks and months of his life, teaching other hostages about the history of the Holocaust. And here this 76-year-old father and grandfather was taken out of his bed in near Oz. He was a farmer, taken hostage into Gaza. He devoted his whole life to teaching about the Holocaust, and he experienced the Holocaust at the age of 76 and was murdered, just like his ancestors were back in Poland. This is the message Bibi Netanyahu has to bring to the world. We have to educate the world. We have to tell the world about the atrocities that have befell the Jewish people. Because if there is ignorance and only headlines that people read and don't understand exactly what occurred to innocent farmers and 6-year-old grandfathers, yes, the world talks about, of course, the young girls who are in captivity and the Bibas family, little children, but also 76-year-old grandfathers. This is what we are here to do, to teach, to educate, because there cannot be any understanding which will lead to true grieving and mourning and compassion and empathy without knowledge. That was the message of Alexander Danzig's life. We need to teach our youth. We have to teach the world. We have to educate people, because our only hope of stopping this evil is through teaching and education. I hope Bibi will bring this message to the world today, because the more people understand, the more they will empathize and have compassion for innocent people and stand up in the face of evil to defeat it. Have a good day.